Alrighty, welcome to Module 4, where we're going to talk about speaker management. In this session, we are going to cover call for proposals, general sessions, designing presentations, and some overall information about educational sessions. So the reason we talk about this is when you think about a meeting, you have lots of events, but a big component of what's taking place at your meeting are speakers, people presenting knowledge, their experiences, case studies, ideas that they have in bringing folks together around those common topics that people are interested in. When you have a good set of speakers, that is really what makes or break your conference. When you don't have a lot of good speakers, people tend to not want to come back. So we'll talk a little bit about what each of these things are. So first, to get your speakers, you generally do what's called a call for proposals. And this is generally not for your keynote, your general sessions, sometimes plenary, but this is generally what's going to be for your educational or breakout sessions, which make up the bulk of what takes place at your conference. So generally you have about 1 to 2 keynotes or lock notes or general sessions, and then you have many educational breakout sessions that make up the core of it that allows people to design their own experience. But it's important to do a call for a proposal because you want to vet your speakers. You don't want to just take anybody presenting because they say they're knowledgeable. You want to make sure that they can prove that they're knowledgeable about the topic or that they have a good proposal. So in these next couple slides, I'm going to show you what are some of the things that are in a call for a proposal. It's generally done in a survey software like Qualtrics, SurveyMonkey. In this case, the one that you're going to see here is what's called FormStack. If you're doing more academic proposals, there are things called ChairReady, and ChairReady is the big one, and they have other systems, but a lot of times you can also even do it in a Google form. It's just simply collecting everything in a repository. Specifically, I highly recommend you want to do it in something that gives you a spreadsheet so that you can look at everything holistically, but also having a view where you can look at each proposal independently. So what's in a call for proposal? Presenter information, who the person is, the description of their presentation, learning objectives, why they're qualified, which is very important, and then any other data that is needed for you as the event manager or the event committee. So, presenter information. You generally want their full name, their title, what organization or company they represent, ideally their biography, either they paste it in there or they provide a link to it, how many years they've been in their respective field, any other thing that talks about why they're qualified. And then I like to collect a photo ahead of time, not for the review purpose, but ideally you're trying to get as much information as possible that's going to populate your app or your website or your program when it comes time to do that. So the more you can get ahead of time, the less you have to go back and forth to get them. Qualifications are very important. If you're going up for continuing education, you want to make sure that, let's say if you're doing a presentation about a dentist, that this person is a dentist or a dental hygienist, something that makes sure that they are qualified and they are qualified to present that. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see all those things. Each of these produce a respective column in our case, Google Sheets, and you get all that information. Then you want your presentation description. In this, it's decided by you and your committee about what you want to collect and how you're going to use that to judge others, either with the rubric or how you're going to look at it. But at minimum, you want to know what is the title of their presentation. On the left-hand side here, you say this must be the final title for inclusion of the program, because once again, we want to avoid going back and forth, but we want to make sure they thought about their titles. Things about titles, you want to make sure that they're appropriate, that they do describe what's going to take place in the description, and make sure they're not offensive. You want to know what are going to be their main topics or objectives that are covered, either in a narrative format or normally most people prefer bullets. And it's just, you generally want to know that they understand what learners are going to walk away with from this. And that normally will help them design their presentation. You obviously want the description. Once again, here in this case, you'll see that they will say this is what's going to be printed. Now, as the committee or the host organization, you do have the right to reserve, you reserve the right to edit for copy. So if there's grammatical mistakes, stylistic things, you have that right to edit it, but you want to get it as close to as final as possible from them. You want to ask why it's relevant. Why is this topic relevant at the moment? Sometimes things are very, very easy and makes complete sense. Sometimes you need to ask them to elaborate more. If your organization has certain groups that it's relevant to, you want to ask that. So here in this case, for our graduation conference, we talk about graduates, alumni, honorary degrees, et cetera, et cetera. And they can say, this is who it's for. So that way you can make sure you're getting a diverse choice of descriptions, or sorry, diverse choice of presentations. It's not just going to be all on one topic. Another great question is, have they presented this session before? So that allows you to know if they're a newcomer, or if they presented it multiple times, you know it's probably a good session. And you can always ask for where and references definitely come into play if you're paying somebody. Then you want to think about what is the appropriate audience, and that's normally how many years have they worked in their respective field. That's is determined based on your industry, but you want to know if it's somebody for beginners, mid-level, or advanced. So for example, if someone wanted me to go to a presentation about how to plan a convocation, that's a newcomer for me. That's not something I want to care about. But if we're going to talk about change management or working with a new leader, that's generally more mid-level to advanced. And so that's something I may want to attend. If your area has specific industry areas or very hyper-specific topics that can be talked about, this is where you can collect if they're going to talk about that. Type of presentation is also great so that you have varied types of presentations. So down here we see information, where we're going to talk about our own expertise or experience on something. A panel discussion where we may bring together multiple people to talk about the same topic, or a case study, a review of a project process or experience and how you improved it, implemented it, and what happened. And sometimes in this case, you may also be presenting with a sponsor, so you can also submit that. And then at the bottom, you can't see it, but it says, please indicate all your audio visual needs. Most of the time, most places provide a projector or screen, microphone, internet access. But sometimes people need a little bit more, and so you just want to ask them that. I highly recommend avoiding videos, if at all possible, in other presentations, because sometimes it causes problems if a person's not technology savvy. So now let's move into general sessions. Your general sessions is generally broken up into 3 types of sessions. So the first on the left-hand side being keynote. This is generally your opening session. It's going to set the tone for the conference, generally very inspirational remarks, and it's really going to guide what people are going to learn over the next few days. It's generally someone very prominent in the field or as inspirational. And it's generally introduced by someone who's really high up in their field, or it's the presenting sponsor who sponsored the keynote. Sometimes, most of the time, they're 60 minutes. Sometimes they go to 90-minute limits, but ideally you want a 45 minutes to 15-minute split, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but that means 45 presenting, 15 minutes for Q&A. The more Q&A you can offer, as long as it's moderated, generally the better. This is where normally a lot of your money is spent on any speakers that you're bringing. This is someone that is going to attract people to your conference. They want to see the conference because of this speaker. This is where you also see a lot of people engage what's called a speaker's bureau, where they're going to pay a company to manage the speaker for them. And so, and pros and cons is you get a reputable speaker. The con is this is a presentation they've done so many times. It's very rehearsed, very produced, and it can be great, but sometimes people have seen them a lot. And depending on where you go, some people charge $100,000, some people charge $10,000. So this is where you spend a lot of money. Then from your keynote, on the closing end, you have what's called a lock note. Some people may say closing keynote, but the technical term is a lock note, but most of the time you'll see closing keynote. This is that closing session, the last thing that people are going to see before the end of the conference. Once again, still inspirational, but most importantly, the goal of them is to reaffirm what you've learned or something that's really that they're going to take away, that's going to be valuable to them in their career. Generally, you don't want them to overshadow the keynote. Sometimes they do just because of personality or a great presentation, but you don't want them to overshadow the keynote, but you want them to be memorable. It is also introduced by someone high or upcoming in their field. And normally it's a second presenting sponsor or someone who's not the highest sponsor, but someone who still gave a lot of money, who's doing that welcome and introduction. Generally, once again, about 60 minutes in length. Sometimes you leave room for questions, sometimes you don't. It's up to you. Generally, costs less than your keynote. Then a third session that's becoming more prominent is what's called a plenary or a panel session. And sometimes it takes place as the keynote or the lock note, or it takes place throughout the conference as kind of a featured session. And normally you want to do this type of panel when there's a variety of opinions or responses that they're talking about with a subject. It's generally moderated by someone who is very knowledgeable, and it should be moderated. In my personal opinion, there should be no more than 4 people on the panel, ideally 1 moderator, 3 speakers. The more you get, the longer it takes or the less time you're giving to other people. So in my opinion, keep it to 4 people max, 1 moderator, 3 panelists. About 60 minutes in length. That gives a little time for introductions, opening statements, answering those questions, and then ideally some time for Q&A. You can extend it to about 90 minutes if you want to, if you think you have enough engaging speakers to allow questions from the audience. Now, let's talk about designing presentations. This is very important for you to understand when you're soliciting your presentations. So this is generally how the conference presentation timeline goes. You have your keynote in the beginning, you have multiple breakouts, and then you have your lock note. And this was taken from a training I did a few years ago, about 3-4 years ago. And it's called the Digital Event Strategist Training. And when I took this, I was looking for how can I better design digital conferences that was becoming more popular even before COVID. And so these were some things that I learned. So keynote, you have 3 breakouts, and then you have your lock note. So when you're thinking about your keynote, here are 2 ways you can do it. Option 1 is there's the introduction. Then they're going to present for about 2/3 of that time, kind of reintroduce themselves or their main idea, and then leave about 1/3 of the time for a question and answer. And so for the presentation, that's about 45 minutes, Q&A about 15 minutes. The benefits of this is tried and true formula. It's what most people expect. It's okay. When you're getting your Q&A, sometimes you have pre-planted questions that you're going to ask, or sometimes you're going to line up people in the audience and get information and get those questions live. If you're going to do questions from the audience, please always think about being accessible and have them come to a microphone. And if they can't go to a microphone, at least make sure that the presenter repeats the question. Like I said, gold standard is get them to a microphone, line them up. It's okay that awkward running around the room. It's okay. That's better experience for somebody who may be hard of hearing. But if you can't do that, make sure the presenter repeats the question. So this is option 1, 45 minutes presentation, 15 minutes Q&A. Now, here's the better option. Option 2, where you're kind of breaking it down over and over. So still you have that 45 minutes with the presentation, but you still have that 15 minutes of Q&A. But you're spending about 5 to 10 minutes telling a story about it, and then they're going to learn something. What did they learn from it? And you go back and forth, back and forth. And what that allows us to keep it engaged, it's keeping the material fresh. All these learning objectives should be connected, but you're providing a story, a personal anecdote to it. And you should always end with the story. So this is, I think, is personally better. And when you get to that Q&A session, a lot of times somebody may have a story that they can tell to answer one of their questions. And this is also great that if you're going to get some pre-populated questions and give them to the keynote, that allows them to prepare their learning and stories that they're going to tell. So then you have your breakout sessions, what's taking place throughout all of the days. These should be designed to help tackle problems and present solutions. It should help your audience go down a very certain path or go further with their knowledge, thus meaning they should be very, very, very specific. You don't want them to be too broad or too ambiguous or too vague. And it's not a general session, for like a better way to put it, or it's not a introduction. This is something that people are going to learn and they want to walk away with very specific things. So a common thing is you have these three. There's a proposal. I am proposing something to you that I think you should do, or something that I've learned. Here is the evidence of why I'm an expert in that and why am I proposing this. And here's the action that I think you should take. It could also be the same thing if you're doing a case study. Here is what we were asked to do. Here is what we did. And here's how we're moving forward. These three things is a great way. And this is what you can always provide to people and help them format their presentations. So with that, I'm going to end on two stories so you can understand and learn from this. So I want to say in 2014, I got to attend what was called the National Association for College and University Business Officers, for those who work on the business side of the university. It was the area I was interested in learning. And I was really interested in going because the keynote was Bill Gates, the founder and former CEO of Microsoft. I was so excited to see him because I'm like, this man is smart. He invented Microsoft. He is great. Oh my goodness. He was the most boring speaker ever because there wasn't a lot of energy. There wasn't a lot of inflection in his voice, just very, very soft-spoken. And that's not what people want to see. Now, was he intelligent? Did what he talk about, was it great? Yes. But his delivery was very, very boring. So it was hard to really stay engaged with him. Now, obviously, out of respect, we did, but it wasn't the best. Now, what I think would have been a better option for him was to have a moderated discussion where you have someone who's a little bit more dynamic ask him questions, and then he responds. That way it puts a little bit more energy to the conversation, or put him on a panel with other folks. But then sometimes you run the risk that he may get overshadowed. But most of the time, people are going to give Bill Gates his all due respect. And then my last story is, and I couldn't find a picture, but here is a title of a presentation of a keynote that I did. Not that I did, but that I solicited. It's called The Whole Person and the Whole Story, Acknowledging Historical Trauma and Systematic Racism in Native American Healthcare. It was by Patricia Grant. And she was a behavioral health practitioner in North Carolina, specifically in the Cherokee Reservation. And the reason I picked her, along with my committee who I was working with, was historically at this conference, it was generally older white men who worked in the medical field, who were kind of your administrators, not necessarily practitioners. And we know that a lot of folks in the behavioral health who have to experience somebody who works in behavioral health are generally from many, many types of backgrounds. And so, and one of the feedback we got was we wanted to see somebody who represented a population that our folks serve. And so one of our sponsors was particularly interested in working with those who live on reservations and indigenous communities. So I put a call out, asked a lot of my committee and other folks of who do you recommend? And so what was important about this was she is not necessarily by any means a research expert, but she has lived experiences and she was a great practitioner. And so we picked her. And one of the people on my committee said, she's not qualified. She's not great. She doesn't know anything because she doesn't have a doctorate. She's not a researcher. The area that she served was small, et cetera, et cetera. And we got a lot of pushback from it. And my favorite part about this, and I wish I had a picture of it, was at the end of her conclusion, or at the end of her end of her presentation, she got a standing ovation by all 200 people in the room. And he, the dissenter, was the only person with his back to her because he protested her so much. And it was just this wonderful thing to see when you listen to your feedback and put some things up there. It's really important when you put the right person up there. And so I put this from a lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, of thinking about who is your audience and what do they serve, and making sure that you're finding representation for all of your audiences and that they're represented and that their stories are heard, because that will definitely take your conference to the next level. So with that, that ends this week's presentation. I will post another session or video about conference enhancements.